So mistake number one is applying for too many cards too fast. I get it. The moment you discover the benefits of credit card points and rewards, it's like finding buried treasure. Free flights to Europe, cash back on everything you buy, VIP airport lounge access. Who wouldn't want to grab every single card offering these perks? But here's where beginners make their first critical error. They apply for everything at once, thinking more cards equals more reward. That's not always the case. Every time you apply for a credit card, the bank performs what's called a hard inquiry on your credit report. Think of it like the bank taking a peek at your financial report card. One or two peeks, not a big deal. But when you start applying for 5 cards in 2 months, each inquiry chips away at your credit score. And even worse, when lenders see a flurry of recent applications, they immediately think, ooh, this person is desperate for credit. And that's a massive red flag. So here's what actually happens. Let's say you apply for 3 cards in a single month because you want to maximize those welcome bonuses. Well, your credit score is going to drop, sometimes by 20 points or more. And then future lenders will see those applications and get nervous about approving you for anything. And those hard inquiries stay on your credit report for up to 3 years. So while their impact on your score fades after about 12 months or so, every lender who checks your report can see that history of rapid fire applications. So that's why I generally recommend waiting 3 to 6 months between credit card applications. That gap shows banks that you're not frantically scrambling for credit, which makes you look responsible and trustworthy. And even though you can often get away with 2 card applications around the same time, pushing it beyond 2 applications in a short time frame is asking for trouble. So the general rule is, as a beginner, focus on getting 1 solid card that actually fits your spending habits, and then prove that you can handle it responsibly. And then when you're ready for a second card, and I'm talking 6 months or more down the road, your credit score will be stronger and banks will be much more likely to welcome you with open arms. And that brings me to mistake number 2, which is maxing out your credit limit. And this one is brutal because it can destroy your credit score even when you never miss a single payment. Because when you get your first credit card, the bank gives you a credit limit, let's say $1,000, and essentially says, go ahead, spend up to this amount. But here's what they don't tell you. If you actually use most of that limit, then your credit score is going to drop. And that's because a large component of your credit score is your credit utilization ratio, which just refers to the percentage of your available credit that you're actually using. So for example, if you have that $1,000 limit and you regularly carry a $900 balance, then that's a 90% utilization ratio. And so to credit scoring algorithms, this signals that you're overextended and you could be at risk of defaulting. But even a much lower utilization ratio, like 50%, can also lower your score. So keeping that utilization ratio under 30% is generally considered safe, and staying below 10% is even better. And so here's how fast that 90% utilization ratio can hurt you. Even though you pay it off every month, the credit bureaus see your high balance when your statement posts. So the solution is simple. Never let your statement balance get anywhere near your limit. So if you have that $1,000 limit, try to keep your spending under $300 before paying your statement off. And if you need to make a larger purchase, consider paying off your bill immediately before your credit card statement even arrives. Because remember, you don't have to wait for the statement. You can pay off your credit card at any time. And as your credit history improves, then you can ask for a higher credit limit, because a higher limit can actually help your score as long as you don't see it as permission to spend more. And that brings me to mistake number 3, which is the classic rookie mistake that destroys more financial futures than just about anything else. And that's treating your credit card like free money. Because when you get that shiny new card with a $2,000 limit, it doesn't represent $2,000 of extra money you can spend. It represents $2,000 of extremely expensive debt if you can't pay it back immediately. Because here's the harsh math. Credit card interest rates typically hover around 20% a year or higher. So if you carry a $1,000 balance and only make the minimum payments, then you're going to pay roughly $200 in interest over the course of a year. But minimum payments are usually only around 2% of your balance. And so on that $1,000 of debt, your minimum payment might be just $25. And after paying that $25, the interest gets added to your remaining balance, so next month you actually owe more than when you started. So let me show you how this death spiral works. You charge $1,000 worth of expenses to your card. You make the minimum $25 payment, but at 20% interest, about $17 of that payment goes to interest, and only $8 goes toward your actual debt. And so next month, you still owe $992 plus new interest charges. So if you only make the minimum payments, it'll take you over 4 years to pay off that $1,000, and you'll end up paying nearly $1,400 in total. And here's the part that makes this even worse. Remember all those credit card rewards we talked about? If you're carrying a balance, they become completely worthless. For example, suppose your card gives you 1% cash back. You spend $1,000 and you earn $10 back. But if you don't pay off that $1,000 immediately, the 20% interest rate destroys any benefit you get from the 1% reward. So you're getting $10 back, but paying $200 in interest. So the solution is simple, but it still requires discipline. Treat your credit card exactly like a debit card, but with delayed payment. Never buy something on credit unless you already have the cash sitting in your bank account to pay for it. And set up automatic payments to pay your balance in full every month, not just the minimum amount. Now, moving on to mistake number 4, which is falling for 0% promotional rates and buy now, pay later. Credit card companies love to dangle 0% interest promotions like bait on a hook. These offers sound like free money, and technically they can be, but only if you navigate a minefield of terms and conditions designed to trip you up. So let's start with balance transfer offers. You get a mailer promising 0% interest on transferred balances for 10 months. But if you take the time to read the fine print, you'll discover there are several landmines inside. First, there's usually a balance transfer fee of 2 to 3% upfront. So if you transfer $5,000, then you immediately owe an extra $150 in fees. Second, that 0% rate is temporary. And when it expires, the rate often jumps to 20% or higher. And then third, if you miss even one payment, many companies will cancel your promotional rate immediately and apply the full interest rate retroactively to your entire balance. And then retail 0% offers are even trickier. Say you buy $2,000 worth of furniture on a store credit card with a 0% interest for 12 months clause. What you need to know is that most of these deals use a tactic known as deferred interest. So if you don't pay off the entire balance by the end of the promotional period, then they charge you interest on the full original amount back from the purchase date. So if you miss that deadline by a single day, you instantly owe 12 months worth of retroactive interest on $2,000. And then there's buy now, pay later services like Afterpay and Klarna. These seem harmless because they often don't charge interest if you pay on schedule. You can buy a $200 gadget and pay $50 now, and then $50 over the next 3 months. The psychological trick here is that $50 feels manageable even when $200 doesn't. But at the same time, this encourages impulse buying. So you end up making multiple buy now, pay later purchases, and suddenly you have $150 in monthly payments spread across different apps for stuff you already have. And if you miss payments, you get hit with late fees, and some buy now pay later providers will report delinquencies to credit bureaus, which damages your credit score. So the smart approach is to only use these offers if you have the full amount sitting in your bank account and you're just taking advantage of the delayed payments for cash flow reason. And then finally, mistake number 5 is closing your oldest no-fee credit card. For a lot of people, they think that closing old credit cards is smart financial housekeeping. But actually, closing your oldest credit card, especially if it has no annual fee, can hurt your score in 2 different ways. First, your credit score shows how long you've been managing credit successfully. So if you got your first credit card at age 19 and now you're 29, that's a decade of credit history. But when you close that old account, it falls off your credit report and it won't count toward your credit history length anymore. Plus, closing your oldest card is going to lower your average account age since all your remaining accounts are newer. But then second, closing a card reduces your total available credit, which can spike your utilization ratio. So let's say that you have 2 cards, each of them with a $5,000 limit, which gives you $10,000 in total available credit. You typically carry a balance of around $2,000, which represents a 20% utilization ratio. But if you close one of those cards, then your available credit drops to just $5,000. And that same $2,000 in spending now represents a 40% utilization ratio, which might hurt your credit score. So if the card you're considering closing has no annual fee, there's literally no financial downside to keeping it open. Just put a small recurring charge on it, maybe something like a Netflix subscription, and then set up automatic payments from your bank account. This keeps the card active and it maintains your credit history length at 0 cost. But if the card does have an annual fee and you don't want to pay it anymore, then you can just call the bank and ask about downgrading to a no-fee version of the same card. A lot of major banks offer this option, and you can often keep the same account number and opening date so your credit history remains intact while eliminating that annual fee. Okay. At this point, you're probably feeling much more confident about avoiding these common credit card traps, and you should be. But there's actually something else beginners need to understand that can make all the difference between earning mediocre rewards and capitalizing on life-changing travel opportunities. Because while avoiding these kinds of mistakes will keep you out of trouble, there's a specific strategy that the most successful credit card users follow to turn their everyday spending into free flights all around the world. So to learn exactly how you can pick the perfect credit card and start earning enough points for world-class vacations, watch this video next.